This podcast is part of the TrekSphere Network.
To find more Star Trek-related content, visit TrekSphere.com.
Let's shoot for 40 minutes today in this episode.
Okay.
Which means we'll have to record for 3 hours and 25 seconds.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I thought you meant like 40 minutes recording, 40 minutes episode done.
No. That's the ratio of edit to non-edit.
Right. Yeah. I need to be done around 8:15. Like, do you...
Plenty of time.
Okay. All right. Let's do it.
As you know, this is the measure of an episode. Right, Jonathan?
So far, yep. You're doing good.
Okay. All right. Where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes a Star Trek episode a genuine Star Trek episode, and not just softcore porn. Soft core porn.
What are you doing, Step Ensign?
Step Ensign. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan. And we do this using 3 criteria. 1, is there sci-fi that is absolutely required for the plot? And 2, is that sci-fi... Wait. Sorry. That's part of number 1. And is that sci-fi explored in any way? And I need to talk to you about that. Number 2, is that sci-fi presented in a novel or unique way? And number 3, is there a moral or ethical dilemma faced by any 1, 2, 3 people in the episode? I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And this week we watched Star Trek.
We did. It was so good.
So good. Voyager, Season 7, Episode 7, Body and Soul. The Doctor experiences physical sensations for the first time after 7 downloads his matrix. Yeah. 7 downloads his matrix into her body. It sounded like 7 was a him, like 7 downloads her matrix into his body. But I was wrong about that.
Right.
The end. I'm Paul. Where are we?
What day is it?
Yeah. So this is kind of light on plot, I will say.
Oh, yeah. This episode was very much like, what if we got one of the actors to act like another one?
This is what's called writer fatigue. This is season 7.
Yep.
This is all they got.
They knew it was their last season. They're just spinning their wheels. Okay, but I do need to talk to you. So let's just get it out right now. Do you feel that the sci-fi was explored in this episode? Like, does Technobabble count as an exploration? Because they explained what she did to get the Doctor's body, the Doctor's consciousness into her. But that was it.
This is another, for me, it's another Back to the Future syndrome, where they just have the ability to do it, they do it, and then we get the plot to happen. Because the plot was kind of your everyday, have you ever seen movies, Jonathan? Well, they had these movies in the 80s and 90s where usually it was an older person and a younger person switching bodies.
Right.
Their consciousness would switch.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this is. We just didn't get the other side of it. It would have been cool to see Robert Picardo do a 7 of 9. You know what it is.
Yeah, but usually
my
that's
brain is tired.
like a magical lightning strike, or it's a totem from an ancient civilization or something like that. Like, it's not usually a program that's uploaded into somebody else.
No, but it's the same result.
Right.
The fact that I don't think that they explored it very much in this episode, because, you would have had little elements of like they were having trouble with it. Like it worked flawlessly because it needed to work flawlessly for the script.
Right.
To me, it would seem like if you wanted to make a Star Trek episode about this, you would not have it be about, isn't this funny watching Jerry Ryan do a Robert Picardo? It's more about, there's trouble. Their personalities are intermingling. They don't know who they are. They've become a whole new consciousness. It's a new person. And if we extricate, it's Tuvix all over again.
Right.
Right. We keep running into Tuvix. Something like that, as opposed to just doing the vice versa version of Voyager.
Okay. I'm beginning to wonder if there isn't a deep exploration like that. Like, I don't think there are enough episodes of Star Trek that have that deep exploration that you want for that to be a criteria that determines whether or not it's proper Star Trek. Yeah. Like,
so we're having a big fight. Having an existential fight here.
Mommy and Daddy are really fighting. No, like just after the last episode and after this episode, it just got me thinking, like, you know, is the deep exploration something that, like, because you enjoy it, you want it to be a part of every Star Trek episode? Or does it happen often enough that that's what makes a Star Trek episode feel so Star Trek? You know, so that's, I mean, it's just kind of like way back at the beginning 2 years ago. Like, I think that is something that we just need to keep in mind as we're going forward. And it may just be because these 2 episodes were bad back to back. But yeah, seeing these 2 episodes where it was touched on and required for the plot, but it wasn't explored in any way. Are we going to run into that more often?
Kind of like it needs a B plot
right
type of criteria that we had, even though the original series doesn't have B plots.
Exactly.
So we have effectively disqualified it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But I do feel like in Next Gen, this happens way more.
Quite possibly.
This concept of integration of the science fiction into the plot and not just a manner of having a particular plot line.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe it's not Next Gen, so therefore not proper Star Trek. Is it?
Right. We figured out the criteria that makes Star Trek The Next Generation proper Star Trek and nothing else.
Yeah. Maybe. I do feel like Voyager does it. But taking our criteria aside, do you feel like in your gut, this episode is proper Star Trek?
I mean, it had the sci-fi aspect to it, and like I said, it's unique enough because normally it just happens with magic and hand wave. It doesn't, like, they don't give a scientific explanation, where this time they genuinely did.
Which is kind of Voyager's thing, by the way. We've talked about this before. Voyager is not really into exploration in terms of the technobabble and the tech itself. They typically will have a couple back and forth, a couple of exchanges of dialogue with technobabble, kind of getting us to where we need to be plot-wise, and then it works perfectly. The idea works perfectly, or it doesn't work at all, and they move on.
Right.
It's not sort of a, will this work? Let's see if it works. Oh, it kind of worked. Let's move on, the kind of thing.
Right. So to speak to that, then, you know, there really wouldn't be a lot of proper Star Trek episodes in Voyager because they, like you just said, they don't explore it. Like, it either works or it doesn't.
Yeah, well, they should have thought of that when they were writing it.
They should have known that those are the 3 criteria to make a proper Star Trek episode.
It's not, I mean, we don't make the rules. Oh, wait.
Right.
We did make the rules.
Yeah, we literally made the rules. Like, sorry, my hands are tied. It's out of my hand. Yeah, it's a self-imposed deadline, and there's nothing we can do about it.
I'm voluntarily holding my hands behind my back. There's nothing I can do.
Right. Do you see how locked my fingers are? There's nothing I can do about this.
But you know what I mean. I feel like we need something. There needs to be something, because at a certain point, we're just, you know, if we go down this road of every show is going to be different in their own way, that's like, oh, well, then we have no podcast.
Exactly. Well, right.
You know.
Yeah. And that's why we took out the B plot thing. You know, but like there has to be something, this is the whole point of our podcast, that makes Star Trek Star Trek. And I'm not saying that like exploration shouldn't be in. I'm just saying, seeing these 2 episodes back to back where they were fun, which obviously that's subjective, but they both had a sci-fi aspect needed for the plot, but it wasn't explored. And I get what you're saying about like what should have happened with the exploration of it, which you also understand why it didn't happen because of the plot, which again, they could have revised the plot so it did happen.
Right.
That would have been amazing if it was like a fight of the consciousness. You know, like Seven was still there and the Doctor was in there too. And Seven was like, you know, just they were trying to keep it cool that there were 2 personalities in there. And like maybe they fought about their attraction towards other people, you know, and so they're just acting weird in front of both the guy and the girl. For me, that would also be an exploration of it because it's part of the plot. Like even if they're not talking about what's happening to their subroutines, it would still their swapping would be, or their integration would be part of the plot and not just hiding the Doctor in Seven's body.
This is the problem. I feel like we've been running into this. I feel like we ran into this in the last episode about Molly. What was the Deep Space Nine Molly's game?
Yep.
I felt like there was a pitch. We want to put the Doctor into Seven's body. Wouldn't this be great? So let's figure out a way to do that so we can have that episode. So what they did is they create this kind of peripheral science fiction reason that the Doctor would be inside of Seven's body. And they actually did a good job. This whole race of people who is...
Well, they're hunting down their holograms, yeah.
They're hunting down holograms for some sort of reason that they never go into.
Which they touch on.
All we know is... They barely touch at it.
Yeah.
And that could have been the whole B plot.
Right.
Of why is this race... Why do they hate holograms? Why are they so bigoted toward why do they think everything they do? And we didn't even get that. We didn't even get that sort of scene that you would expect of like holograms. All of them were terrible. Sort of the stand-in, them lecturing us about racism or something like that.
Oh, that's totally what it was.
Actually
yeah.
Happy. Yeah, I was happy that they didn't do too much of that. But instead of just having a reason to put Seven into, or put the Doctor into Seven's body, they could have explored all the stuff they created. Because they created that race of people. They created this whole idea of putting a consciousness into another consciousness. But it just felt like, we want to have a fun episode.
Right.
And that was the crux. That was the whole premise of the episode without really even thinking about it.
Right.
And I guess they forgot that this wasn't an episode of Gilmore Girls, that this was an episode of Star Trek.
Well, and it's doubly startling, too, because they touch on the aspect of slavery, and they touch on the aspect of, like, non-consent, but they don't explore those things at all. And
it was only for the sake of a joke, though.
Yeah. Well, and then
they're like, you ate too much chocolate cake.
Right. And then,
so now I have to suffer the consequences.
And then later on, when there's the physical activity that happens, like the Doctor strawmans Seven in the middle of that.
It was really more of a way for, it was a character moment for the Doctor by way of Jerry Ryan playing the Doctor.
Yeah. Just a quick side note for the entire episode. Robert Picardo actually acted out and filmed all of his lines as 7 of 9 and sent them to Jerry Ryan so she could learn his like elocution and mannerisms.
Oh, I thought you meant as a joke he acted out all of his lines as 7 of 9, like doing Jerry Ryan.
Right. No. No, just to give her like a source, yeah.
That's kind of cheating.
Right? It's not like what was the Joss Whedon show? Not Imposters.
Dollhouse?
Dollhouse, yep.
Yeah. When you have somebody do it for you, then it's not as much of an acting gig, is it?
I mean, it is to a certain extent, but you're right. Like she should have known his mannerisms by that point where she was playing him better than he was.
Right. They didn't really explore the photonic thing anyway.
Right.
It became something, we need a reason to get the Doctor into 7.
Exactly.
That was all that they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, again, is frustrating because like they were talking about how the Jill of all trades, you know, she was talking about how they had a photonic when she was younger and he was like family. And there was nothing about how like he was turned off when he wasn't needed, or he wasn't allowed to leave the house or anything like that. It was just like we treated him like family, and I don't know why he turned on us. You know, the end.
Well, you're kind of talking about him like it's a pet.
Right.
And
like
I can see where the problem came from.
Right, exactly. And like Star Trek is not known for just piecing out little bits of information and expecting the audience to pick up on the rest of it. And so for them to just have these little throwaway lines that imply a much bigger issue and not explore it was more frustrating in this respect than enjoyable.
Well, and they had plenty of time to go into this because meanwhile, back at the Pond Farm, the B plot was happening on Voyager, right?
Oh, the B plot, yeah.
And it was basically Tuvok having a serious case of the blue balls. And I don't...
Go for it, what?
No, you go ahead.
No, it was more like he was just horny as hell. Like this was not started sex and then stopped. This was him like looking to bang somebody. So Paris like just straight up admits what the holodeck is for. He's like, I can make something for your wife. It's not cheating if it's the holodeck.
Well, and why is this the first time this has been flown out as an idea?
Well, DS9 had it as well. Like there was an episode where they specifically talked about the holo suite was for, which like why are you calling it a holo suite? It's a holodeck. Like there's no, it doesn't matter if it's a closet or a mansion inside the place. You can make it whatever you want. So
right, yeah, I don't understand what the difference is. Maybe there are a suite of them. There are many rooms.
Oh, right. I didn't even think about that. But no, there was an episode where we watched it where they straight up said like the holosuite was being used for banging.
Right. It was no longer implicit
Yeah.
in its purpose, or at least what most people use it for.
Right. Yeah. It was right.
But no, like why wouldn't Tuvok immediately go to the holodeck? I don't understand why this isn't a genuine prescription to solve Ponfar when your mate is not around. I don't understand why was Paris suggesting he go on some sort of medication that they've been formulating since they were stranded in the Delta Quadrant? It's like we have a holodeck. Why wouldn't we just use that?
Right. Yeah. Like, why is it kind of like an unspoken thing that everybody's totally fine with, except for Tuvok?
Yeah, you think Tuvok would even break the rules? It seems like it's a pretty intense thing that's going on for him, and we've all been there,
right?
But the idea that you can just go somewhere, right?
We haven't been in the middle of foreplay and have the woman just disappear. Like,
I do wish they were a little farther along.
I am shocked that he didn't use his Vulcan strength to just destroy the holodeck at that point.
Or just go on a murderous rampage.
Right.
He just. Well, I wish that they kept turning it on and turning it back off. Like he keeps getting further and further into the process, and we keep checking back in.
Right. Well, and he has no idea what's going on, like why it's being turned off. So so they just think someone's fucking with him. It's just Paris in the back with the rheostat turning it off and on. Yeah. But yeah, and everybody's totally fine with this. Like Paris is like, I'll build you a holodeck suite, and Janeway says the last time you had the flu was 7 years ago. You need to go take your leave, and you can come back when you're ready.
Yet again, this is just another Janeway is the smartest person in the room, even if she's not in the room type of thing.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Like, yeah.
She's not keeping track of everybody. She doesn't walk up to just a random female ensign and is like, hey, it's that time of the month. Maybe you should be at home.
Maybe she does.
I guess we don't see that.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't feel... Do we need to explain to the listeners, in case there are listeners who've never seen Star Trek, what the Ponfar is? People know, right?
Yeah, people... Anyone who's listening to our podcast is either completely lost or they know what Ponfar is.
Okay, good. I don't want to describe it because I don't really know that much about it. Do Vulcans just not have sex except for every 7 years?
Right. Yeah. That's got to be some crazy sex. Well, no. Remember, they do when it's logical. Then they would do it, but they have to every 7 years.
Yeah, it's a biological imperative of some kind.
Right.
Which kind of shows, it's a little bit of science fiction there. It kind of shows, even though they look very similar to humans, how different they are physiologically. Because we are set up to kind of just do it whenever possible, right? Uh-huh. Like any given opportunity, we're supposed to take. That's the biological imperative of humans. But it seems like what would be the evolutionary purpose for every 7 years? I guess it's sort of maybe a migration thing. Maybe the early Vulcans were somehow migratory, and the only time they were able to do it was in that 7 years,
right?
Or in that time frame.
Yeah.
So I guess there's some interesting stuff going on there. I'm sure this is well documented in one of the technical manuals, but I like my version better.
But Paul, do you realize what you're doing right now?
What?
You're saying the sci-fi exploration was in the Ponfar.
Yeah. This is how much it's given me to work with this episode. I have to resort to the B plot.
Right. But would you say that's an exploration of sci-fi? Like the fact that they're talking about Ponfar and how to take care of it?
No, because I just invented everything that was cool.
Yes, but would you agree that they were discussing how to take care of Tuvok's Ponfar, which is not something that's unique to humans? And
no, I feel like no. You are not going to talk me into it, because all they were talking about was where to put Tuvok's jizz, not the exploration of the actual process. Because it seems like, according to this episode, it's just a sexual encounter with his wife. It's not like some sort of weird thing. It's just, he has to encounter them like it's almost like role play.
Right.
And maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But I think we know very little about Ponfar. Yeah.
Ponfar, yeah.
What do you think? I'm asking what you think.
I I think that you don't like the anthropology aspect of things, but I think that does qualify enough of an exploration as horrible as it is. The exploration of Pon farr, like the fact that it's every 7 years. Like they were trying to. I mean, you're right. Like they were trying to figure out where to put Tuvok's jizz.
That's all they were doing.
But it was an exploration insofar as they were. I mean, if it was a technical problem that they were trying to solve, it's part of the plot. Like, so that would absolutely qualify as an exploration of the sci-fi.
Okay, I feel like now you're being the dick's advocate.
I mean, I kind of am, but like I feel like that's true. If it was a technical thing and they were trying to figure out the best place to put it, you would be all over that, thinking that it was a great exploration of sci-fi. But because it was just a biological imperative, you're not as into it, so you're not willing to admit that it's an exploration of the sci-fi.
Well, knowing what Pon farr is,
right?
Already knowing that it's just every 7 years Vulcans have to make love, which, by the way, kind of feels like a spin-off, like a one-off spin-off of Star Trek, where it's kind of like The Purge. You know that movie? But it's
just one episode where
on
what
Vulcan?
if it right? So it's not a different time. Every Vulcan has it at the same time every 7 years.
Is that true?
I don't know.
Don't know that.
Like I didn't think about it that way, but that would make more sense than it to be every 7 years in that Vulcan's life.
Right, because it would never line up
right.
with anybody. And do women have Pon farr?
Yeah, T'Pol did.
So it has to line up with somebody, or you just kind of have to grunt and take it if you're not in alignment.
Right. Yeah. So it's like 2 years and 5 years.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't seem. Now that we're breaking it down, it seems like it has to be like every Vulcan somehow synchronizes biologically with the Pon farr.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everyone would just be miserable.
Right. Right. Or they're just having sex all the time.
How do we get onto this? Blue balls?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm saying that this is an exploration of sci-fi. I mean, I don't know.
What do you know? What do you know more? What did you know more at the end of this episode that you didn't at the beginning about Pon farr?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how much Star Trek you've watched. You know, if this is your first time, then it is an exploration. Well, is it? Let me think.
It's not novel. We knew what it was, both of us.
There's nothing about Pon farr in general that makes it an exploration of that sci-fi aspect of Vulcans.
Right, and Tuvok's experience doesn't seem to be any different than every other Vulcan's experience.
Well, right, but I'm just saying, like, if you watch this episode for the first time, like you're not learning anything about Pon farr.
No, and yet we have another B plot giving us information that we don't need or don't want. Nobody asked for this.
Right. Well,
that's why I said they had more time.
Well, yeah, and that's the other part of it too. I feel like happens a lot in Voyager, which is very frustrating. I scoffed a lot in that sentence. There wasn't any growth. Like he got sick and then he got better. Like that was the B plot for Tuvok.
Yeah, it was just we have a problem. How do we fix the problem? This is how we fix the problem. Holodeck. Seems the holodeck would fix a lot of problems. When I think of it.
Yeah,
but they could effectively, and I'm surprised they didn't do this. Speaking of the holodeck and having nothing to do with this episode at all, they could have landed somewhere. Like the Captain Janeway could have landed the crew somewhere, sedated the entire crew, put them all into the holodeck, made sure that the Voyager was connected to some sort of power source where it could run indefinitely on this planet, and just run the holodeck until everybody dies. You just be done with it. Everybody goes off in their own little world. Why not do that?
Right. That makes me wonder. Then I wonder if there is a population limit to how many people can be in the holodeck at any given time. Like we know it's at least one, but we know that we've seen up to 7, I think, in a holodeck at any given time, like in the Robin Hood episode. Right.
Well, I would imagine it's not so much having however many people in the group. It's however many when they branch off into their own worlds. Right. The computer has to keep track of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be the hard part. But I don't know. It's the future. They can do it. Right? They can calculate star charts and all this stuff. That's hard. So I feel good. Let's assume they can do that. And maybe they open, like when you're in a hotel and there's like a connecting door between rooms. They do that with the holodecks so they can utilize all the holodeck. Mm-hmm. And I mean, what an amazing Voyager movie that would be. It wouldn't make it Janeway, even though this seems like a Janeway thing to do. She wouldn't be the person who arranged this and orchestrated this thing. But the whole thing is Voyager, the movie starts with Voyager making it home. And everybody goes off on their little science fiction things. Everybody's kind of going, they all go off in their own directions. And things start to go weird, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Characters, the NPCs start to kind of malfunction. And nobody knows why. It's like, I saw my wife was doing this weird thing. She only dressed halfway. I don't know why. And the walls will start to look weird. Just weird stuff. And we find out down the road that, this is a holodeck.
Right.
And it's malfunctioning because the computer is either malfunctioning or going bad, or it's just too much for it to handle. Mm-hmm. Because it's having to keep track of too many things. And we slowly unravel this thing where they're still on a planet somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the Delta Quadrant. And somebody landed them, connected Voyager to a power source, and they've been living what they thought was them getting home after 7 years. But in fact, no, they are still in the Delta Quadrant, and they have to get back.
Yeah,
I'd watch that.
Yeah, that would be a good movie. Or a good two-parter.
Just a one-off. I bet you could convince everybody to come back and do that. How many years later? 20 years later? 20? Yeah, 20 years later.
Come up to 25, yeah.
How do you explain 7 in Picard, though?
Well, right. I mean, so you would have to show them at this age and then have scenes at the end where they're back to their younger selves.
Oh, no. The movie has to resume their trek back to the Alpha Quadrant.
Well, but the series ended with them getting back home.
No, that was all part of the ruse. That was even the whole encounter with the Borg, holodeck.
Right. So
they never made it home.
Right. But what I'm saying is we've seen them get home, so the movie would have to take place with them already being home.
Right. Yeah. It starts with them at home, at Earth. They actually, the first shot of the movie is Voyager arriving.
Right.
Because that's where the series
Oh. So you're saying when they wake up, it's not that no time has passed. It's that 20-year. You're doing the whole, same thing that we just did with Next Generation, waking up and they've been unconscious that entire time. Oh, what was that for? But you did that for Next Generation too.
Well, yeah, it's basically Inner Light, except in real time, because they have to age.
Right.
Oh, now I want to see that movie. I want to see Well, I want to know who did it, because you can't make it Janeway. Or can you? Can it be Janeway? That would be awesome if it was Janeway.
It would be, but there'd be you would piss off so many fans if you did that.
I think it would have to be one of those Lower Decks types of, not the cartoon show, but somebody from the Lower Decks sabotaged for some reason.
Right. Or, I mean, you could lean even heavier into the Matrix and say that they needed the bodies for something. And
they kind of did that. Oh, no, that wasn't because they needed the bodies. That was, remember when Voyager encounters this planet that they're all laying dormant, sleeping? They're in hibernation.
No.
And you don't remember that? Oh, we'll
no.
get to it.
Yeah.
It's actually a good
cool.
episode.
Yeah.
Good episode. Anyway, back to Ponfar.
So just another note. This episode is actually very meme heavy.
The one that I noticed was the 7-1 eating the cake.
Right, the 7-1 eating the cake. And then also when the doctor is called out on his indulgences and he makes the little side jaw, wide-eyed.
Oh, yeah, which I lauged at, by the way.
Yeah.
That's funny. It was only briefly up there at 3.5 speed, but I still caught it.
Right. Yeah. So I need to talk about Janeway in this episode because we just recently saw her talking about how Starfleet protocol, they have to adhere to it the entire time. And then in this episode, they have that ship shooting at them and they just take out their guns right away. And then they shoot the ship again. They shoot the thrusters.
Well, the bad guys, the people they shoot, basically are rendered inert in the air, and they're like, lower your shields, prepare to be boarded. And Janeway's like, I don't know if you know what just happened.
Right. But she essentially bullies the alien race to give her back what she wants, which is not how Starfleet does these things. And so this goes back to Janeway doing what she thinks is best and deciding when to use Starfleet protocol. Like she is not the steadfast one when everyone else is telling her to not, unless she needs to be.
Yeah, she does the quote, sometimes diplomacy requires a little saber rattling,
Right.
And it's, well, no, like I feel like if you were to let her drone on about herself for a little while longer, she would have said, I learned this from one of the best teachers at Star. It's teaching tactical whatever. It's Starfleet,
Right.
And I feel like that's not, because she flat out threatens him. She's like, we can do this your way. We can do it my way. My way is us blowing you up right now.
Right.
And I can just see it kind of simmering behind her eyes. Like
Just let me. Yeah.
Give me please. Please let me destroy you.
Yeah. So the thing that I really had an issue with in this episode was the arguments between Seven and the Doctor. The Doctor should have been more aware, and he should not have been so dismissive of how he was treating Seven's body. And she was aware of everything that was happening. So then why did she get mad at the kiss and the massage? Like, she knew the events that led up to it. So she should have understood the Doctor's actions in those moments. Like, that he was kissed and he pulled away and he was given a massage because he had a cramp.
Well, especially as a very logical personality, Seven would understand why he was doing these things. He wasn't doing these things just to get his rocks off.
Right.
That there was actually a purpose to it. And you're right. And she should have known that. I think that the practical answer is that they wanted these exchanges.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
Right. But you're right. I feel like they should have been on board in some way, or that they would. I feel like, why didn't they do the thing where they go, their personalities kind of fight it out, where Seven, we can tell when Seven is there and when it's the Doctor.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that would have made it a little bit more interesting, and
Yep.
it would have maybe placed a little bit more higher stakes, because the lady that the Doctor was working with and the captain who had the hots for Seven, they would have started to notice and start to realize something was wrong. They really don't know that anything is wrong,
right?
Until
the Doctor
they're
just
made
appears.
aware.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, "Aha! It was me the whole time." Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But it did feel like, oh, won't this be fun for the audience to see one character play another character?
right.
And that's the whole conceit of the show.
Mm-hmm. See, and for me, as an audience member, what I like to watch is when an actor takes on different personas at the same time. Like when it would have been more fun to watch Jerry Ryan play the Doctor and Seven fighting with each other than just playing the Doctor.
Yeah. And it was just such a loose plot line anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Doctor was just taking care of injured people.
Right.
It didn't seem like, it just didn't have that, again, with stakes and teeth.
Mm-hmm.
There's no teeth.
Yeah. Well, there were no stakes, just wine and cake.
But
so there was a scene that I don't know if like I'm just more woke now or if it's just, a difference in 20 years. But the scene where Seven gets upset with the Doctor about how he is still using her body for indulgence, and he gets mad at her for not using her body that way. And it was very cringy for me, because that's not the argument that's happening right now. Like, you can't defend yourself by saying, well, you do it too. Like, your action is your action and it's not in relation to other people. And so it rubbed me the wrong way, where he was getting mad at her saying that she is denying her life. Like, it's her life. She has that choice.
Well, the problem was that she was right. And there's no arguing, and so they needed to have an argument, and that was the argument that they felt was a way for it to actually be an argument and not just being like the Doctor being scolded. I mean, I suppose the Doctor is a bit proud and maybe a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so maybe he didn't want to lose the argument.
Yeah,
giving him a very human aspect, I guess, but it did feel a little thin.
Right. Well, and when the emotions were gone, like at the end of the episode, he should have apologized to her for just getting mad and not listening to what she was saying. And that, I feel like that moment with her would have been earned much more rather than her coming in saying, "You're right, I'm sorry." Like he should have apologized to her, and she should have said, "Thank you, but you're right. Like I did think about it, and I'm not enjoying the pleasures that now as a human I could and should."
It came down to hijinks.
Mm-hmm.
They preferred the hijinks of the wacky doctor doing wacky things with Seven's body.
Yeah.
And not we have a serious problem.
Right.
They think we're doing something that we're not. The doctor's life is in jeopardy. We have to get off the ship. And there was very little of that.
Right.
And I guess I'm asking for a show that they didn't make at this point, or I guess an episode they didn't make. But I feel like the Doctor and Seven and even Ensign Kim, they are best utilized in a plot line that isn't comedy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, yeah. And I wonder if it's a Voyager thing or if it's a season 7 thing. You know, like, is it something that we're going to run into with Next Generation, DS9, and Voyager, where like season 6 and season 7, they're kind of running, they're so comfortable with the show, they're not really worried about the Star Trek aspect, and they're just thinking about like plot elements. Wouldn't it be funny if, or wouldn't it be cool if, and how do we get there? Rather than exploring those ideas.
Like Fistful of Datas type of thing?
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
though that wasn't season 7.
I know, but yeah, it's that kind of thing. Like what if like Star Trek was in a Western or whatever?
And I do wonder if we encounter these types of episodes, because by this moment in the run of the series, the actors are probably pretty confident in themselves and in their place in the show. And even at this point, they know this is the last season. So they start kind of throwing their weight around maybe a little bit, saying, "Hey, I want an episode about this.
Right.
I want to stretch my legs a little bit. I'm tired of playing the same old Doctor, or the same old Seven, or whatever." And maybe that's where this comes from. I don't know. I would love to interview somebody and say, like, where does an idea? How does it start?
Right.
And how does it get developed? And because they always have good ideas. I feel like Voyager always had really interesting ideas. Their execution just kind of always wore thin to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I actually have that note. Like, speaking of just not having any teeth, like they glossed over the slavery, the concentration camps for the holograms, the mind rape. Like, there was so much in this episode that they just dismissed in a sentence or two, rather than actually exploring. You know, like the photonic aspect, like that is immensely sci-fi. Like there's the allegory with slavery, yes, but we don't have holograms, and so
I want to know why. Why
Right.
would you? What happened in the society where all photonics are considered evil, or this other race that they seem to be battling against, or this other group of people? Because they were obviously, what I can interpret from this very thin plot line was that the photonics were escaping to a safe haven with this other group of people.
Oh, okay. I didn't even think about with this other group of people. Yeah.
I'm guessing that's what was happening, but we never get into it. It would have been interesting.
But that makes sense.
Done a whole thing on that.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that they didn't go down the road of when the captain realizes that he was essentially flirting and making out with what was essentially a male. Mm-hmm. He doesn't believe it at first or something like that, but then he's able to convince him that they didn't go down the road of homophobia.
Right.
Right? That it was just sort of like, oh, I didn't realize that was what was going on. Okay. And then they were done with it. Mm-hmm. I'm glad it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
It could have easily been a thing where the captain is disgusted, or even the Doctor is disgusted in some way.
Right. Well, yeah, and they very much downplayed it. Of, you know, like, as you can see, I'm not your type or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just have him become more aroused.
He's like, you're Hannah Montana.
And the Doctor kind of just insinuates that the other lady might, have a crush. There are other ladies in the universe that you might open your eyes a bit, expand your horizons, and maybe you'll notice new things.
Right.
And he picks up what he's laying down. He's like, huh? Her? Ugh.
Well, right.
No. Yeah, but kind of didn't do that. By the way, how great of an opener would it have been? So the way that Janeway and the rest of Voyager finds out that the Doctor has somehow embodied Seven, literally.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That would have been a great opener.
Yeah. So, right, this episode is one of those episodes that should have been flashback. and they were trying to figure out how to get the Doctor out of 7 of 9, and the Doctor is explaining how he got in there.
Right. The whole thing with the other race could have been the first half of the episode, and they finally get back.
Yeah.
Right? Because nothing happened on that ship. Nothing interesting happened.
Right.
So let's get rid of that. And then, yes, you're right. That would have been so much more fun to have it take place on Voyager, and like, how do we get them out of there? And they have to do something interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that would have been a great opener, because then we're like, oh, that promises a really interesting episode.
Right.
Why is the Doctor inside of 7 and not like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and we learn it as the episode goes on, rather than having it be the crux of the start of the episode.
But they didn't do that.
But they didn't do that. Damn it, we just made it a great episode. Like, that would have been so much fun.
It's so much better.
Yeah. All right. So the last moment, which I'm still so confused by, is like, people can taste real food and they can experience things on the holodeck that are real. So why not have a person go taste food on the holodeck until it tastes the way it's supposed to, and then provide it to the Doctor, provide him like a subroutine where he can actually taste these things. Well, I mean, and the more that I think about it, the more that you don't even have to do that. Like, you could just put into his subroutine just like a single section of this meal, and just let him experience those tastes. Like, you would put in like, this is what this meal is. It tastes like this, and it has this element of, umami and savory and all that sort of thing. And so he would just be standing there and be like, oh, what is that? You're like, oh, it's dick.
It's like, well, I don't know why you can't just program these things in. I mean, I was kind of, why not go to the trouble of retrofitting him with a stomach, as they suggested earlier in the episode? Mm-hmm. With like some sort of holographic stomach, so he can just eat food. I don't understand why that would have been a problem. I thought that's where they were going.
Right. Well, because it would be real food in a holographic stomach that would then have to be holographically removed, or removed in some way.
Right.
But the food is real, so like you'd have these nutrients that weren't sent anywhere, so it would just be this big like smashed glob of whatever he chose to eat.
That'd be really gross.
Right.
But Data does the same thing.
Yeah, but so, I legit assume that Data has a storage space in his stomach that he just removes for himself.
Right. So with the Doctor, well, he'd make Paris do it. It's time to clean my stomach, Paris.
But that's the thing, like, when he just has to disappear, and that glob just like splats to the ground.
Or maybe just beams away or something. I don't know. This is doable.
Right.
This is the 24th century.
So gross. Can you
so,
imagine?
You hear it. Like, you just hear it hit the ground every time
Right.
it takes a bite.
Like,
But
you also, like, what if he forgets? Like, what if he forgets that at the start of his shift he had, I don't know, like, gah, just to try it.
I like that he doesn't forget, but he doesn't care.
Not my problem.
Yeah, he just walks around. I can't smell
I'm a doctor,
anything.
not a janitor.
Yeah.
Right. Nice.
Yeah, I agree. I got the impression he wasn't going to enjoy any of these things that Seven. She was just going to be eating in front of him while he held something he couldn't enjoy.
Right. It was almost like a dick move on her part. Like,
Totally.
I'm going to tell you how much I enjoy this. Right.
And she doesn't even enjoy it. She says that I'm probably going to get sick from this.
Right.
But this is worth it to be able to eat it in front of you. This is basically Seven's revenge.
Right,
for
right.
the Doctor overindulging
Yeah.
in her body.
Yep. So now she gets to indulge in front of him and show him what he's never going to get again.
Right. And then make her feel better.
Right.
Imagine that. They probably do have an instant cure for a hangover, or if you ate too much, or any of that stuff. They probably have just anything.
Yeah. Well, like you said, they probably just beam it out. It's organic material for the most. Yeah,
That's true.
It's organic material.
But what if they accidentally like grab too much of something?
Right.
Like, oh, got the pancreas.
Yeah.
They're gonna start
just
feeling
not
weird
even.
really quick.
There's now a hole in your stomach. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be real. But they can do surgery and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They suck it out of you. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so for me, it's a no, yes.
What's the order?
Not proper,
No.
but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was fun to watch Jerry Ryan pretend to be Robert Picardo.
I'm trying to think, is this a proper Star Trek episode, though?
Oh my God, are you serious?
I guess not. I mean, I'm trying to, like, I want to give it the benefit of the doubt. Because they had such a good idea, But But I guess I'm right. I guess it isn't as proper Star Trek.
Well, it's right based on your criteria that we are currently using that it has to be an exploration of sci-fi.
Yeah,
and there
it's
is no
not.
Exploration.
You're right.
There are many ideas that are presented within the plot, but they're not explored. And so consequently, it's not proper Star Trek.
Right.
The one criteria that I'm worried about is just it being an exploration of sci-fi, just because the last 2 episodes haven't been proper Star Trek because that idea, even though it was required for the plot, was not explored. And so I worry that that's going to happen more often than not. And so we will lose more than half of the episodes because they didn't explore the sci-fi. But we'll see.
We'll see. We have 11 more years.
Right.
Determination.
And that's if we stop watching all the new episodes. Like,
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I was thinking that when we add Prodigy to the show, that's when I'll have my daughters on, because that show is actually deliberately geared towards kids. So,
Okay. That'll be fun.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's see what we're watching next.
Sounds good. The Visitor! Episode 2, Season 4 of... Oh, it's this one, of Deep Space Nine. And the blurb from Paramount
Again?
Plus says, an accident on the USS Defiant traps Ben Sisko in subspace. I mean, that's such a huge spoiler. But, okay. All right, and then the one for...
But it does prove they watched the episode, because that's
Right.
obviously not in the cold open.
Yeah, and then the one for Deep Space Nine. Do you have that one?
For you mean for Amazon?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. When a tragic accident causes Cisco to vanish before his son's eyes, young Jake begins a lifelong obsession to bring him back.
Yeah, that's way more the plot of this
Okay.
episode. And
That's
then
Amazon.
all right. Paramount Plus kind of gives you the spoiler, and then there's Netflix. Aspiring writer Melanie wants to know why Jake Sisko stopped writing at 40. Jake explains how his father died in an accident and then reappeared. Yeah, it just feels like it's totally out of left field. But that is 100% the cold open. This character, who's only there to get the plot started, we never see her again. She's only there to get Jake talking. Is
I
in
know, it's so weird to have a day player character name in the blurb of the episode.
right. Yeah. Oh, I'm so
That's a
sad
good
that all
one.
the other Netflix, that all the other Star Trek episodes are off of Netflix, just because the blurbs are so bad.
Or so good.
Right.
I think they're so good.
Yeah. Well, they are so good in just how terrible they are. I get such a kick out of them. All right, let's go watch it.
Okay. I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
But you already knew that.
I like whenever we do Cisco that it's in his angry mode. His assertive angry mode.
I can't do his like. But you already knew that. Like his growl. Like
it's
yeah.
slowed down. Well, I want you to do next
Those
time
are
we
the
do
nerdiest jokes. I never get tired of how nerdy those jokes are. Where we talk about something and then like everybody imitates it.
Everybody gets their shot.
Not throwing away mine.
Next time I want you to do the Cisco. Maybe I'll do it. Like the elated Cisco.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's just with a smile on.
I guess
But
that's
you
true.
already knew that.
Yeah.